I want to start with a question, and I want to actually have you sit with it. If you knew with absolute certainty that prices were going to be higher in 3 years, would you buy today? Most people would say yes, of course. I mean, obviously. So here's the follow-up. What's stopping you? For most people watching this, the honest answer is it doesn't feel like the right time. The world feels uncertain. Headlines feel heavy. The uncertainty has a way of making the safest choice feel like you're doing nothing. But doing nothing is also a choice. And in real estate, it's usually the most expensive one. This is your GTA market update. And today, I'm going to walk you through everything happening right now. The fears, the facts, and one very significant piece of news that changed the conversation this week. Let's be honest about where we are emotionally as a market, because real estate doesn't move on data alone. It moves on confidence. And right now, confidence is at a historic low. We're talking lower than the Great Depression era in terms of consumer sentiment index. We got trade war fears, we got global conflicts, financial market volatility. People are looking at the world and thinking, this isn't the moment to make big decisions, and I totally get it. That feeling is real. But here's what also is real. The Urbanation February 2026 report, one of the most credible housing market analysis in the country, makes this point very clearly. The setback in 2025 was driven almost entirely by a collapse in consumer confidence, not by the fundamentals of the market itself. Interest rates declined to their lowest level in 4 years, and the S&P and TSX returned 30% in 2025. The economy didn't collapse. I mean, the city didn't stop growing. What collapsed was the feeling that things were okay. And feelings, as any good therapist would tell you, they're not always fact. This week, the Bank of Canada announced it is holding the key interest rate steady. And the reason matters. Inflation pressures are persisting and global economies uncertain. On the surface, this sounds like more bad news, but I want to show you a different way to read that decision. The Bank of Canada is holding because inflation is under control, enough to hold, not because the economy is collapsing. And the rates at their current level are already at a 4-year low. Urbanation projects that they will remain stable through 2026. Not spike, not crash, stable. Stable rates mean predictable mortgage payments. Predictable mortgage payments means ability to plan. And ability to plan is exactly what the last 3 years didn't offer our buyers. Let's start talking by mortgage delinquencies, because this is the topic that is going to generate a lot of fear-based headlines in 2026. And I want to make sure that you're reading it correctly. CMHC data shows that Toronto's mortgage delinquency rate sitting at approximately around 0.4. And yes, that number is rising. It will continue to rise as well, and we'll see more power of sale listings come onto the market this year. That is a real and documented trend. It would be wrong to minimize a trend like this. But here's the context almost no one is really giving you. The United States of America, a country with globally respected functioning real estate markets, has mortgage delinquency rates above 1%. Toronto, at its current elevated levels, is still less than half that number. Here's why this matters. Canada has had such an extraordinary disciplined mortgage culture for a very long time, and delinquency rates close to zero for many years. And even a modest normalization looks alarming on the charts. We're not heading towards crisis. We're heading towards something that looks a lot more like normal. And normal, by global standards, is still very healthy. What does the power of sale inventory mean to a buyer? It means motivated sellers. It means negotiation conditions that haven't existed in many years. It means opportunity wearing, a costume of a scary headline. Here's a stat that I want you to really absorb. In 2025, total MLS sales across the GTA came in at around 62,433. The 30-year average for the market is 84,689. That gap is over 22,000 transactions in a single year. 22,000 people, families, first-time buyers, investors, who looked at the market and looked at the world and said, not yet. And according to the Bank of Canada data, a significant portion of these people didn't leave the market. They became renters. They signed a lease. They told themselves that they would buy when things settle down. Now, here's the thing about waiting for things to settle down. There's rarely announcements for that. There's no bell that rings. There's no headline that says, okay, it's safe now, everybody come back. What happens instead is that confidence quietly returns. Listings get competed with. People who waited look at the prices 6 months later and say, what happened? The Bank of Canada's own data now shows renters planning to buy in the next 12 months are at their highest level in years. Selling intentions are rising sharply. The coil is starting to tighten. And then there's the population story, which is genuinely one of the most interesting subplots in the market right now. GTA population growth actually was a negative in 2025. Unprecedented. A combination of non-permanent residents leaving, Canadians immigrating abroad, and federal government's intentions to pause aggressive immigration targets. On paper, that's a demand reduction. Less people, less pressure on the housing market. The Canadians who left, some of them are going to start to come back home. And when they do, they're going to need somewhere to live. We don't know exactly how many people. No model has fully priced this in. But it's a tailwind that nobody's really talking about. And it points into one direction for demand. Now I want to show you something that looks like good news on the surface, but is actually a warning. Rents are down, vacancy is up. Purpose-built rentals are completing across the GTA. Purpose-built rentals are buildings designed from the ground up to be rented, not to be sold. For tenants, the rental market has genuinely softened in more options, more incentives, and more negotiation power. That part is real, and enjoy it if you are renting. But here's what's happening at the same time on the other side of the ledger. New condominium starts in 2025 just hit a multi-decade low, down 63% in a single year. Urbanation reports that 390 new condos across the entire Greater Toronto and Hamilton area in Q3 2025, the lowest quarter since 1990. Only 11 projects started construction. The reason is straightforward. Developers can't make the math work. Development charges have increased 171% since 2017. Construction costs are up 92%, and the price per square foot that they can actually sell at only went up 63% since the 2017 period. At $1,100 a square foot, they are losing money. So 44 projects over 10,000 units have been canceled since the start of 2024. What does that actually mean? It means that the pipeline is empty. What looks like an abundance of supply right now is the last wave crashing on the shore. Behind it, silence. In 3 or 4 years, when today's non-starts should have been completed, there will be almost nothing new. And demand doesn't disappear, it waits, and then it completes. The shortage isn't a future risk. It's being constructed through inaction right now. Now let me tell you about something that has happened. And I want to give you the facts in order, because this is exactly the kind of thing where precision really matters. For years, Ontario's new home buyers had access to a provincial HST rebate on new construction, a program that could save buyers up to $24,000 from the provincial portion of HST. It was a useful tool. It moved the needle. But for most buyers looking at $900,000 or $1.1 million, $1.3 million properties, it wasn't enough to change the conversation fundamentally. Here's what changed. On March 12, 2026, Bill C-4 received royal assent. The new federal first-time home buyer GST and HST rebate is now officially law. Not proposed, not a consultation, signed, sealed, and in force. Then on March 17th, CRA announced that they're now starting to accept applications. What does that mean in dollars? Well, eligibility, first-time buyer, purchasing and qualifying newly built homes priced $1 million or less can now receive up to $50,000 back, representing 100% of the federal 5% GST portion. On a home priced at $1.25 million, the rebate steps down to around $25,000 and gradually goes down up to the $1.5 million mark. And now, Ontario, in 2025 Fall Economical Statement, the province announced its intention to remove the full 8% provincial HST portion for qualifying first-time home buyers on new homes up to $1 million, with reduced relief up to $1.5 million. A $1 million property, that stacks up to around $80,000 of total provincial relief, combined with the existing $50,000 rebate. And here's the other side of the equation. Builders who've been in pain, who've been discounting, who've had every incentive to negotiate. Those same builders now know that a first-time buyer is walking through the door with $50,000 from the government. That changes their posture a little bit. The period of maximum leverage, government incentives, plus highly motivated buyers is right now, while most people are still trying to figure out what Bill C-4 even means. Now's the time to get into a pre-construction. And one more thing before I close. On the surface, another reason to pause, another reason to wait. But here's the reframe. Stability after years of volatility is actually good news. It just doesn't feel like it when you're hoping for a rate to be cut. I want to leave you with this. The people who've made the best decisions in the market, in any market, were never the ones who had perfect timing. They were the ones who had information to act when everybody else is still afraid. 2009 felt terrifying for many people. 2020 felt impossible. The buyers who made moves during these windows didn't go and do it because they were certain. They did it because they understood the data well enough to be comfortable with the uncertainty. Right now, you have a market with historical pent-up demand and very few people competing. A federal rebate of up to $50,000 that is law and accepting applications today. A supply pipeline that is quietly collapsing, which means the inventory available now will not be available in 3 years. A population story with upside. No one really priced in the prices that are expected to soften modestly before the next cycle begins. That's not a market to fear. That's a market to understand. If anything in this update shifted the way that you think, if you've been renting and watching, if you walked away from a pre-construction conversation 2 years ago and are wondering whether the math has changed, if you're a first-time buyer trying to figure out if this is your moment, I want to have a conversation with you. One conversation, no pressure, only clarity. Click the button below, book your appointment, and I will see you next month.